All right, folks, we are back. It's No Apologies on BEK, and Lori and I are so very happy to welcome Ronna McDaniel, chair of the Republican National Committee. Wonderful guest, and very, very happy to have you on, Ronna. Welcome.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Lori, our National Committee woman from North Dakota, and Rick, thank you. I'm so excited to be on your show.
Yes, once Lori told me that she set her mind to having you on, I knew it was going to happen eventually. So it's good to see you.
You know Lori. Okay, anybody, I know Lori too. This was going to happen.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about some of the stuff that is really on everybody's mind right now. First of all, I would like your take on the cancel culture and the defunding of the police, and we're going to go back, and then we'll come to more current stuff as we go along. But the hypocrisy is just so unbelievable, and it's such a bad idea. We in North Dakota, we back the blue. We're really, really good about that here. They've saved us from a terrible protest that we had, and everybody was great. Our blue was just fantastic. And so we're not like that too much in North Dakota, but the rest of the country is really struggling with this defunding of police stuff.
Well, it's something being championed by the Democrats all the way up to Kamala Harris, the vice president. Even Joe Biden said we need to redirect funds. Okay, so this is a centerpiece of Democrats, the Democrat Party right now. And I think it goes further than just defunding the police. It's demoralize the police, demean the police. So not only are they taking away funds, but you also have a record number of police quitting or retiring and less people signing up. So what's happening as a result? Crime rates are spiking. We're seeing huge increases in homicide rates, robberies. Police are not there to enforce many of these crimes in major cities, and it's really hurting communities across this country. And this is directly because of Democrat policies. And I'll just add one other thing, because I think this is important in North Dakota. They also want to take our right to bear arms away. So not only do they want to take away the police, they also want to take away our ability to defend ourselves without law enforcement. And it's funny how all these politicians and celebrities who are so into defunding the police, they have full-time security. They have the means to take care and protect themselves. But business owners in these big cities who are being looted, families who really need that protection are being hurt the worst through these failing Democrat policies.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Now, I was thinking also, too, about ICE, and look what the Biden administration has done to ICE. Talk about demoralizing when they're cutting staff down there where you really, really need it. Now, I have some friends, and they've actually been calling me from the Rio Grande Valley, and they're like, this is what's going on. And somebody said, I've heard anecdotal stories about, like, coyotes giving people burner phones with GPS where to go. They give them a wire cutter. They go through all of these fences. They're ruining these poor ranchers' livelihoods. They're stealing their vehicles, and it's far more reaching than just even with the ICE people, because unfortunately the locals are really, really suffering down there.
Yeah, so let's look at some of the rhetoric on ICE. I mean, you've seen Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez compare them to Nazis. I mean, it's been really, really divisive rhetoric against people who are protecting our border and doing their job as law enforcement. So it is sad to see that, but beyond that, I just interviewed Governor Abbott in Texas. They've had an 800% increase in fentanyl crossing their border. He said no single person is coming across this border who is not being brought through by the cartels and having to pay the cartels. Women and children are facing all types of abuse as they are making these journeys. And you know who supports Republicans and saying we want our borders to be secure and have law and order at our borders? Hispanic Americans. And we saw that in this last election where we had huge increases along Texas and counties like Zapata County and 90% Hispanic county that went Republican for the first time since the 1920s, because Hispanic Americans understand the importance of sound immigration and sound immigration policy. And Democrats have just thrown it out the window, and they don't care. And they're not only putting these ICE agents at risk and these communities at risk, they're putting the people who are trying to come here at risk by creating this magnet that's turned on with no mechanism to control these people coming across our border illegally.
Yeah, it is frightening. And of course, you segued perfectly into voting, too.
No, absolutely. Ron, I just want to ask you a quick question. Both of these topics that you've mentioned, defunding the police, total lack of control of our border, to me, it seems that it's handing you a gift on a silver platter, the RNC. And because what they're doing is espousing policies that really only the fringe far left are going to want to see passed, but your basic people, and especially Hispanics, to me it seems that they are going to lose dramatically a lot of voters. I am sure that you are looking at strategy and how can you capitalize to show these people, not to change the message, but to show them what we as Republicans have to offer is actually going to bring them up and make their world better. Is that a specific strategy that the RNC is looking at?
Absolutely. And there's a couple things there, Rick, and I appreciate you bringing that up. One, there is a contrast between the Trump administration, what happened with many of these communities where you had record low unemployment in the Asian, Hispanic, and African American communities. They knew that wages were going up in their communities. They knew that policies that Trump was putting in place were actually lifting up their families and allowing them to access the American dream. Things like school choice, so many things that Trump did. And now under Biden, it's open borders. We're seeing a huge increase in gas prices, increase at the grocery store, inflation coming in because of bad fiscal policy. We're seeing many, many Americans losing their businesses that they built because the government is paying people to stay home from work. So I think that we are seeing the beginning of what could be a wave election. I'm not going to knock on wood on that, but here's some precursors. We just picked up a mayor's seat in McAllen, Texas. This is a bellwether area of Texas. It flipped from Democrat to Republican. We picked up a House seat in Texas 6, not picked up, but it was a toss up. We got 2 Republicans through to the runoff. We're seeing this energy on the ground, and we're seeing new voters come to our party, and we're winning back some of these moderate Republicans who thought Biden was going to govern in the middle, and they're seeing how extreme he really is.
That is so true. It's nothing in the middle at all. It's totally left. It's very radical left. So let's talk about election integrity. So I was so pleased to be put onto this amazing committee for election integrity for the RNC. And I think that there is nothing more important in this country, to our country, than the integrity of our elections, making them free, fair, transparent, making it hard for people to cheat and easier for people to vote. Both of those things, that's what we want to do.
So true. And Lori, thank you for serving on this committee. Listen, we saw Democrats use COVID as an excuse to strip away safeguards to the election. And I'll give an example that I think is really easy to understand. Many, many states require that the first time you're going to vote absentee, you have to show up in person and show your voter ID to verify who you are. And many states waived that because of COVID. And it allowed safeguards to be removed. And we need to codify these safeguards into law so this can't happen again. And we also need to stand up for these state legislators that are doing this and taking this bold step, like Lori said, to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat.
Exactly. No, so true. And the recent polling also underscores that Americans largely agree with Republican things. I'm kind of laughing about the whole voter ID thing, because what's happened is Democrats are totally flip-flopping now. I mean, they're like, oh, you know what? I think the poll actually is not in our favor here. It's cracking me up.
Yeah, I mean, we just did a poll, and it was 31% Democrat, 30% independent, like the right balance, and 30-something% Republican. And across the board, and when I say across the board, in high 80s, people supported voter ID. People supported having bipartisan poll watchers. They supported having chain of custody and not having ballot harvesters collect thousands of ballots and removing safeguards to the election. They supported not having votes counted weeks after the election. These are things all Americans believe in, Democrat, Republican, every demographic. But it's interesting to see Democrats lie about this and put a racial edge on this and say this is racism and these are Jim Crow 2.0. It is divisive. It undermines the horror of racism, and it shows that they're not willing to talk about the issues without name calling. They're not willing to say, let's discuss each of these laws piece by piece, and they're lying. And President Biden yesterday gave a speech in Philadelphia, and he lied to the American people. And that's why we did, an ad last night during the All-Star game after they moved the game from Georgia to Colorado to pinpoint those lies cost the people of Atlanta $100 million in revenue because of Joe Biden. Kamala
So true.
Harris, Raphael Warnock, Stacey Abrams. The Democrat Party is being divisive and using racism. You know why? All they care about is power.
Yep.
They don't care about elections being safe and secure and transparent. They only care about one thing. How do we garner more and more power?
Yep, exactly. Well,
Very true.
I hope we can hold you over for one more segment and talk
Sure.
to you in just a second. We'll talk about some other topics as well. Thanks.